Hi everyone, welcome to Dave's Bonsai. On today's episode, it's the heatwave inventory. I have in front of me my Siberian fir, and I think it's a goner. So, I was in upstate New York just this past few days, and on one of the days that I was gone, 102 degrees. Now that isn't what killed this tree. I think this tree was weak this spring, and I'm not sure why. It had some nice recovery late last summer and into the fall, and this little branch down here was a back bud. There's a back bud right here. So I was getting some back budding, and I was thinking, oh, this could survive and do well. So the story behind this tree is I just introduced to my YouTube friends out there, all of you, that I've got some trees in the ground at Bonsai Acres. And the farmer out there, Neil, he calls me once in a while or texts me and says, hey Dave, I got this tree you might be interested in. Because he knows we're looking for movement, oddities. We're not looking for a perfect conical Christmas tree for our bonsai, at least in most cases. And so he's been nice enough to keep an eye out on some trees out on the farm, and if he thinks that I might like it, he gives me a call, gives me a text, and says, hey Dave, come check this out. And this is one of the first ones he did that with me. And he said, Dave, come on out. This one was hit by a lawnmower. Right here, some damage right here. It's damaged on both sides though, which made a really neat story, really neat deadwood feature down here if we could clean that up over the time. And it's kind of been falling downhill, and I'm not sure why. So when I came back from my trip to see my brother in upstate New York, 102 degrees while I was gone, a couple other hot days. You know, I rely on my family and friends to water my trees, and I have so many trees, as you all have seen, that it's a hard job to water all my trees. And my friends and family do an outstanding job, and I couldn't go places without them. And so I so appreciate all their help. But we can't always be by our trees. And so sometimes trees can suffer because of it. But again, this tree has been suffering, and it's been challenging for the last couple of years, actually. I've had it for 2 or 3 years now. And it just hasn't taken off. It had a nice little push of growth, as I said, last year towards the end. It seemed to be like, okay, this is gonna work out well. And I was super excited for this year to see what was going to happen. But it's been through some sprays. I sprayed for what I thought was fungus. These branches are literally breaking right off at the tips. And so, as you can see, there's not a ton of foliage on it right now. And if all of this stuff is all dead at the end, I just grab it, and it just all comes right off. So I have some wire around it, so I'm going to take the wire out. And this tree is going to go into the, there we go, pile of dead wood. Now I might be able to salvage this tree. If I can salvage this tree, here's what I would do. I've been keeping all my dead tree stumps that are fairly big in size because I want to create a scene where a tree is growing over a fallen tree, like I saw in the redwoods. So I've talked about it several times, but I haven't done it yet. And I think I have a couple of ideas of trees I might try to do that concept with. Now this is a great big trunk, very thick trunk. And if I can lay this down on the forest floor, something like that, I can maybe grow some roots around this structure. There's this dead part right here, so I'm not sure if I cut this branch off. And what I would do is I'd cut all these branches off like it was an old growth tree. Because in the redwood forest, you don't see any branches coming out for 100 feet on most trees, 100 feet up in the air. So when they fall down, all the branches down below, of course, crack off, break off, whatever. But you have this big old 100-foot section where there's no branches, and so trees could form in there. So if you imagine this tree right here with this dead wood, maybe laying this way, maybe a seed goes in there and starts to sprout a tree, and it grows and wraps around this trunk. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. All I know now, though, is I need to take off the rest of this wire because this tree is a done deal. So they say a bonsai is never done until it dies. And so I think this tree is done for its first iteration of a bonsai. And now I might bring it back to life in a little bit more artistic format with this idea I have. So we'll do that. So on today's episode, I thought I would talk again about the heat wave, or the importance of keeping your trees watered and cooled off, because the root system is what's going to suffer. And while I was away, we had some hot temperatures, and I came back to about a half a dozen trees that bit the dust. Now, unfortunately, some of them were really goners, and they were on their way out before the heat wave. So again, these are trees that were already struggling. So if you have trees like that are struggling and you leave town for 3-4 days, you got to put those in the shade. I didn't practice what I preached. There were 2 trees that I wanted to put in the shade before I left, and I didn't. But they both survived, oddly enough. But a couple other ones that were in so-so condition, trees that I wasn't over the top concerned about, although I don't want to see any death, they did perish. And I've already put the soil in the recycling bin, and the trees were just really quickly, they're a goner. So let's do an update show. I'm going to show you what's going on with the heat of the day. We're at 92 as I'm filming this right now. We were at 95 yesterday and 102 on Monday, or was it Monday 102 or Tuesday? I think Wednesday was the 80s day. We got some weather trying to muster up here tonight. Hopefully we'll get some good old rain to cool everything down. And a cool front coming through. We'll be back down into the upper 70s or maybe the 80s. So I'll finish taking off this wire, and then we'll take a peek at the benches, the trees, and we'll give you an update on some of the things we've been working on here, Dave's Bonsai. Well, there we have it. We've pulled off all the wire off this tree, and it is a crispy critter. And we lost most of the branches just trying to get these branches off here. So I have yet to see any green cambium. We're down to a stub with this little branch here. So this branch, this tree here, this trunk, what's left of a tree, we will see if we can perhaps plant my tree over this tree, and we'll get a new kind of artsy thing going, because as you've heard me say many times before, I'm always experimenting and trying to emulate things I've seen out in nature. Art imitating life, life imitating art. Let's get to some of those updates. My first update is the hemlock tree, and another one of my experiments that I'm very nervous about, but there's still hope. So back in January or so, I did the chop on the hemlock. After doing some research, it had stated that midwinter chops would work on a hemlock. And cut off all these branches. I know this is going to be pretty low in the end, so I really wouldn't have to keep a lot of these branches at all, for that matter. But I'm considering a possible gin, so I don't know how far up the gin will go. We definitely will have to be going above this point right here. So if I leave this branch right here just in case, I'm going to take my first one off right here. No, let's go right here. I have a pretty decent fine-tooth saw here. A little coarser would have gotten me through this trunk a little bit faster. So cutting down this low removes the possibility of using all that as a gin, but again, I'm not ultimately worried about that. I just want this to be a decent chop. All right, there we go. So as we stand back and take a peek, we got this big old short stubby lollipop. Free up some spacing here. Oh, this is gonna be fun. So looking forward to what's gonna happen with this guy. But let's leave it at that. Now, this tree was a nursery find. Really thick trunk. We got about a 3-inch trunk at the base here. Some nice flaring, and it was pretty thick at the bottom. It was kind of sparse on top. There were a couple of broken sections, but I took it knowing that I would have it this tall or even shorter. But then this spring, I seemed to get some discoloration on the foliage, and I treated it as fungus with just neem oil. So all I put on was neem oil, several doses of neem oil, and I lost a lot of foliage. As you can tell, it's pretty sparse. But not all was lost. When I thought it was just about ready to say goodbye to this really cool, gnarly bark tree that I was looking forward to working with, I started to see some buds on the tips of the tree. So we have a branch right here, and that's all new foliage. Now, is it enough to save the tree? I don't know, but there's new foliage here as well. There's new foliage all right here. All of that new foliage started coming out, and it's over here. So I've got some new foliage on the tips, new foliage on here, and there's even a couple of small back buds back in here. There's even a back bud back in here. There's a little tiny one back in here. There's a few branches back here with buds. Now, with many pines, you're not going to have much survival if you don't have photosynthesis going on, and you need all the foliage to push the back budding and healthy tree. Now, it's in a pot that I have no idea what's going down the root system, but if I touch it now, it is so weak, it is so thin that I don't want to repot it now, so I just have to try to get it healthy. Here's a back bud right here by my finger, actually. So the tree is trying to push out new growth. It's in a mostly shaded spot, so it hasn't been baked by the sun. Here's another little back bud right here. And every time I come out and look at it, I notice things like right there when I'm talking, some more back buds. Here's a little tiny one right here. I've also noticed spots where then, it's just, there's no foliage. That part of the tree right there is not going to do anything. And so I'm just hoping there's enough live vein going to these little tufts of foliage to see if it stays alive. Now, what are my odds of survival for this hemlock? Quite frankly, I think I got a 10 to 20% chance tops that this thing is going to survive past this year. But I tried. I did the best I could. I likely, if I would have put it in a pot last fall when I got it, I don't know if that would have made things worse or better. Sometimes people repot trees when they get it from someone else. They don't know what the soil's like. This is nursery stock. It's been in this pot forever, probably. It might have been a good idea for me to repot this, not like cut any roots or do major pruning, but just get rid of all the soil around the top and the edges, and then just downsize the pot a little bit, put it in some bonsai soil on the sides, and then hope for a better outcome. But again, hopefully not all is lost, but I'm not overly confident that this one's going to make it. So it is kind of sad. But I'm hanging on and clinging on. There is the update of the troubled hemlock. I'm down at the cabin area by the upper pond, And one of the shows I just put out was a show about the barberry trees. I had a couple of barberries, and I had an ash leaf spirea. I came back from my trip, and my ash leaf spirea was wilty and looked like a goner. Now, as you can see, there's green on the tree still, and there's a new set of branches coming out right here. There's a new bud right there, and I think there's one trying to grow right there in the crack of these two. So we have green here, 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 and here. The leaves just a little bit too much heat, even though it was kind of in my shady area. It just was too much for this guy. And so I'm hoping we can recover, but this is a very quick update. Unfortunately, not a great update, but there's still life to the tree. We'll cross our fingers and hope the ash leaf recovers, because I do love it so. So we'll put it back into the protection here in an area where it's not going to get too much direct sun, and we'll hope that it gets reborn yet again. I'm back by the bench I made last year, and there was some leaf burn on some of the forest trees. Right here, my quince, which is in a good shady spot for most of the day. Very, very crispy. I don't know what's going to happen to my quince. The little ones bit the dust. And they were from this mother tree, if you will. But now this one, there's a couple of little leaves. We'll see what happens with the quince. I don't know a ton about the Japanese quince, so we'll have to do a little bit more research to see if I'm keeping it in too much shade, too much sun. But the heat did dry up some of those leaves. But the update is on my really thick multi-trunk lilac tree that I got in this great big box that I made this spring. And all of a sudden, a week ago or so, I noticed the leaves were just kind of starting to look a little bit shabby. And yeah, some of them have completely dried up. Right here, this branch right here, there's nothing left. There's nothing left on this one. There's some life here. There's some life up here. This branch right here, there's some life right there, although not as shiny and young looking and vibrant. It's looking a little peaked, a little darker green leaves, but right here, some just dry. And these things, grow so profusely. I get all kinds of suckers on my other one, and this one, after the repot, I don't know, we have a bit of a hiccup. I don't know if this is fungus related. There is some discoloration of the leaves, which may be too much water on here. As I've maybe stated before, of all of my trees, the lilac trees seem to have the most issue with fungus. So what I might do is go ahead and get a little neem oil on this guy and spray it, tomorrow when it's not quite so hot. It's a little too hot to spray it today, the neem oil. We don't want 92 degrees and sunshine. And the sun, when the clouds disperse, will be right on this tree right now. So either this evening or probably tomorrow, we'll neem oil this and try to save the great big lilac stump here. As I look closer at the tree, I see all the buds that are going to pop, next time, if there is a next time, but a lot of them look pretty dry. I don't know if they're viable buds at all. They're there, but like this one's crispy and died off already. This one's crispy. These are the best leaves back here. They're in the best shape. But if you can see some of the discoloration on these leaves right here, there's some issues. Not sure what that is. And it almost looks more like a fungus issue than just dried up, because it hasn't been this hot the whole summer. So there are these leaves. Again, the best ones. Some decent ones back over here too. And let's go look at the other clump. So here we go with the other clump style. So I've done some work on this, these dead branches, and it's all falling apart. I still get suckers growing on this. Back over here, there's some suckers growing, but look at how lush these tips are. So these tips are all looking pretty good. They're nice and small, so these leaves are typically much bigger than this one right here. Upon closer inspection, there are a few little nuggets of dark brown spots on a couple leaves, but not very much. They do feel a little dry, and the soil is dry on top. but as I do the old finger test and if I had a chopstick, it's not too dry down below the surface. So this doesn't need water for water's sake, but to cool down the roots, I might be on watering number 2 here shortly. But this is the difference between the other lilac and this one. This one still looks pretty viable. The leaves are nice and small, but it's not shooting up a whole lot of crazy new buds right now. So I'm curious what this is going to do with the rest of this year going into fall, if we'll get another section of growth besides just a sucker down here. Next up, I brought you over to the grapevine. So the good update is right here. We pulled this one out of the ground where the Marquette grape was growing. We cut this stump off right here. There's a stump here that I'll cut off as well. And we had growth down below first. And then, on another update, I showed you I had a little bit of a nub up here that was about 6 inches tall tops, maybe 4 inches, growing straight up off the top. And you can see it's growing now to over 1 foot tall. New leaves here, new leaves here. There's a new bud right there trying to form. There's a new bud way down there. And all of a sudden, this started to grow just this last week. So we have another growth on top of this. Now, these grapevines look like they're dead every year. Big, thick, gnarly bark down here. Stuff peels off. They're dry and brittle. And if you break any of these branches after fall into the spring, you can just break them in half. But there's live veins in there somewhere, because there's always, it always comes back almost every single year. Now, the cutting I took from this is not the good update. So here's my cutting that's leaning over a slanting style that was growing up. I had 1, 2, 3 branches here. I came back from my trip and these leaves were dry as a bone. You could curdle them up almost like powder. So I think this one's a goner. I just cut them all off. The tip seemed like there was a small possible cambium in there that could be alive. We'll just keep this in the shade, part sun, mostly shade. We'll just keep it around for a couple of weeks and just see if anything reshoots out of this summer. And if not, it'll go into the dead pile. But as sad as this is, because it was a cutting from this, if this survives, I've got this thick trunk here now with this straight up little branch growing here, and I could have a really, really fun tree in the future with the grapevine. So behind my log here with my one weeping willow that survived, this one died last year, this one perished this year with a critter chop again. This one was chopped as well, but a branch grew off the backside and we've got a foot of new growth here. I'm just letting it grow in the log. That, however, is not what I wanted to show you. Back this spring, I put the collected larch from up north into my Minnesota forest, but I kept 2 of them out. So here's one of the 2 for the update. This is the one that I put in the Sarah Rayner pot that I was so excited about. And I did have some people send me a message that said, hey Dave, maybe you should have just waited and established more roots. And they were right. I should have established more roots. This was my favorite because it had this dead wood right here, and it had a live vein here and a live vein up here. Those 2 perished. They're just not making it. This one was fine though until about a week or so ago. I noticed some wiltiness, and now after this, whatever we just had, it is it's not looking so lovely. We're losing leaves like it is dry as a bone, and it's like it's the fall color season when the foliage just falls off the tree. Now this one probably isn't completely dead, but part of the reason I think this one struggled so much is it fell out of its Sarah Rayner pot more than once. And about a week, few days, 3 to 5 days maybe before I went on my trip, this one was hit by a windstorm, and in the Sarah Rayner pot, the tree just completely flopped right over. Now it was still in decently moist soil, but it was disrupted. I put it into this deeper nursery pot just to see if we could re-salvage this and just let it grow for another season, get some roots going. I don't know that it's completely dead, but it sure doesn't look very healthy. So we'll see what happens with this one. Now I ordered, of course, the 100 larch, and I've got 102 to choose from, even though a couple of those has perished. I've got some backups, but I was really hoping this one with all this character in here stayed really, really nice for me. There's still hope, but again, maybe a 5% chance this one's going to go anywhere. Let's show you the other one, though, that I put in a separate pot, not in the Minnesota forest. So back deep on the tallest part of my original bench, the part I added on just a few weeks ago, is the other tree that we got from the collection. And we put this in my round dimpled pot here with all these kind of patina bumps here. And now we got this shooting off to the right. This one still is green. It's not as wilty. We are going to give this some more water with the heat, around 2 here in just a few moments of the day. But we got some growth on there. It's slanting off to the right. I've got some rocks in there to keep it sturdy, but it kind of looks like it's growing between the rocks, so it's kind of a fun little tree. I hope that continues to progress. So there's the other larch tree from the collected larch from 2 years ago that we repotted this spring. My next update is the big deck I made with all the tropicals right now in the full sun. We've got some dry soil at the surface, but these have some nice moisture down below. I know they're not drying out too bad today, but I will cool off the roots with one more watering again here today in just a little bit. But when I got back from my trip, I noticed a few more yellow leaves. Oftentimes when trees come from a different location and they come here to Minnesota, of course they got to acclimate, and they've been here for a month now, so the acclimation part should be over. And then once in a while we get people on the website for Minnesota Bonsai Society, and people ask me, my tree is turning a weird color way too early. What's this yellow stuff going on? Those leaves just fall right off. When I came back from my trip, everybody, this one lost all of its leaves. So people panic when ficus lose a lot of their leaves. This one has some leaves out here at the tip, but if you look close at this tree, there are little green buds all over this tree that kind of pushed out the old, and it's ready for the new. So there's a new bud deep down right here. These are opening up. These are opening up all these tips, these points, and all these little balls in here of green are new buds. So this will grow a new set of leaves right here in the back. It'll probably look a little sparse for the July workshop, so we'll save that for the September workshop, and it'll have a whole new flock of leaves. Flock of leaves? Where did I get that one from? It'll have a whole new batch of leaves, and we'll be really ready to go. That'll do it for the updates for today. The heat, there's not a whole lot I can do today, but keep the trees cool and do a little cleaning here and there because it's just too hot to work on these trees right now. So, last update, if you will, are all the larch trees. There are a few stragglers in some of the pots that look like this. Again, for whatever reason, this one didn't take. But we're getting a lot of elongation on a lot of these branches down below here, a lot of inch-plus elongation on a lot of trees. Just a couple of brown specks here and here, and one even back here. So we have some trees that didn't quite make it. But out of 100 and I think it was 2, right? 102, only 3 goners. I still have 99. 99 larches in pots. So I got to finish putting all this soil into my recycling bin and get it out of the pot. While I do that, I'll say, hey, take care of you, take care of your bonsai, and we'll catch you on the next one.